to a Friday edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by HoosierIllustrated.com. John Alden with you as always, and I'm sure you can tell that things look a little different where I am right now. The lighting is, I don't want to say non-existent. There's a little lamp on below me, but the overhead lights are off. And that's because this room in particular in my house, along with one other room that you cannot see, is currently without power for whatever reason, and tried fixing it earlier this evening, recording this on a Thursday, as you may assume, but was unable to come up with a solution. So we've decided to plug in an extension cord to an outlet that did have power and hook that up to all of the computer stuff I've got here in front of me, and did a lamp as well, so I wasn't completely in the dark. And here we are. This is how we're recording today's show, and it's going to be a little bit different. I was thankfully joined by Mitchell Paige, who will basically be this entire episode, because just a very weird situation to be in. It's been a very weird week in general. Didn't have a Monday show because of the snow. Wednesday was, I guess, pretty normal. But just the week in general, just because of the circumstances of just the non-normalcy, if you will, with everything going on with life, work, whatever it may be. But that is just life. Nothing is going to be normal all the time. Maybe I just got to be better at accepting that. But hey, this is how we're adapting to this particular day. So, but hey, Mitchell and I cover all the bases. We're not just talking football. We're actually talking quite a bit of basketball. It's a good, it's a 40-minute segment, and we spend the good majority, or really the entire first half of that segment, talking Indiana basketball, and then we get into some Indiana football matters as well. And then we'll probably just wrap up on the other side. I was going to do some non-rev shout-outs and some YouTube comments, but I will just save those for Monday. It's because of the nature of how this episode is going to go down. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into things. All things Indiana basketball, all things Indiana football, with our good friend Mitchell. Joining us after a week off, it is none other than Mitchell Paige here in the year of our Lord 2025. Welcome back to In Touch with Indiana Sports, Mr. Paige.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. We're both team dark right now.
Yeah. You for a different reason than me. I like the aesthetic. You just have no power.
And that no power in this room, to be specific.
Yeah.
But I do think now that we are both, dark, at least it feels like there's some continuity between both of us right now.
I kind of like it. I'm just saying, I kind of like the darkness. If you could find a way to highlight the stuff in the back for you, but keep the lights off, that might be kind of cool. That's all I'm saying.
I've wanted to redo this setup for quite some time now, and we are in the process of maneuvering a lot of things around because of the baby on the way. But of course, we're starting with the nursery, and once we get through with that, maybe if we have some time before she comes, maybe we'll rearrange this stuff a little bit, because I'd like to do that. I'd like to get this room looking a little more aesthetically pleasing. But how have you been? How have you enjoyed I guess it's been only been 2 weeks since we've chatted on here, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's been good. We finished work. Usually the end of the year is a sprint for me. So I was on the road a bunch and trying to get some things done, hoping for a better 2025 in the work aspect. But yeah, just day after day, man. It's freezing cold. We didn't get as much snow as you, but we got a bunch of snow. I'm excited when the little one, Maggie, is like 1.5. We get some snow next year.
Could actually do something fun in the snow.
She's a little bit too small right now to like take sledding or something.
Yeah.
And Laura was sending me these little like baby sleds where you can strap them in there, but I don't know. I don't trust it really yet. So
how do you think Maggie would react, since you of course know her personality? Do you think she'd like it at this age or no?
Yes, she'd be pumped. I just don't know if she's quite strong enough. And we wouldn't be like flying, but still,
you're not taking her to not doing like the Clark Griswold thing.
Exactly. But it's still a little bumpy, and I don't know. I just prefer not to risk it. But next year,
the other day, or I guess it was yesterday, right? Yeah, or Wednesday at the time of this releasing, of course. My wife and I, along with a few of our friends, went sledding for the first time in 10 years. Hadn't been sledding in 10 years. It's weird even saying anytime at this age, when you say you haven't done something in 10 years, you start to really feel like an older human being. I feel like.
Yeah, young people haven't done it. They don't have anything they haven't done in 10 years. We're old now. And we're
Yeah.
only getting older.
That's
which is
true.
okay.
We are getting older.
Which is okay. But what keeps me young is the Hoosiers, man. I guess you're probably on to mostly basketball. I do watch the basketball team a bunch. I've enjoyed watching them the last couple of weeks, which is exciting.
And I gotta say, you're right, you're dead right. It's been weird transitioning from pretty much a heavy football-based show to kind of going full basketball mode once the football season ended. But one thing I said going into the new year, of course, based on where Indiana basketball was at before the turn of the calendar, I felt like Indiana was kind of at a crossroads. You felt like they were where they have always been at this point in the season, the last 3 years under Mike Woodson. And what usually had happened at the beginning of January in each of those previous seasons, they would continue to be disappointing. They maybe win a couple of games that maybe they should or shouldn't win. But this, so far in the 3 games they played in 2025, they almost look re-energized. And I don't, one thing I've talked about with Alec and a few other people, and I don't want to say that's 100% because of this, but there's definitely some truth to it. And it's unfortunate that Malik Renew went down as early as he did in the Rutgers game, but that forced Indiana to kind of switch their play styles, maybe a little unintentionally. And so far, they look like they're playing more free. They don't seem like they're afraid to shoot as much. Luke Goody, especially, I feel like that dude is as confident as he's ever been. Again, only been with Indiana this season, of course, but for as long as he's been with the Hoosiers, and they're fun to watch, at least through these first 3 games of the new year.
I think the fun is the key. They look like they're having fun. They're shooting a bunch of kind of crazy threes, but in rhythm. They're getting out in transition a decent amount. Sometimes a little bit too much, but it still is. I think it's a fun brand of basketball, and I think they're starting to gel. I think Umar Ballo has been awesome. Now, obviously, they're about to run the gauntlet here, where they're
getting close to a very tough stretch in the schedule. I
think it starts at Iowa. The next 10 games, they will be underdogs, according to ESPN.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at, and I know they have something. Is it called the BPI as opposed to the FPI when they do football and stuff like that, and their little predictions and stuff like that?
You know, I have never even considered that. I had no clue what FPI stood for.
Oh, that's Football Power Index. It's what it is.
Then I would guess.
Look at that. You've learned something new today.
Look at me go. I've never. How stupid is that? How stupid is that? That I've never even considered what those 3 letters stand for. I just see them all the time. Like, oh wow, this is just the computer.
It's just the FPI.
Yeah, or whatever the heck they're talking about. That's so stupid of me. But yeah, I mean they're just trending in the right direction. They're fun to watch. It is funny when we talk about Twitter all the time because that's my second home. It is crazy the difference between an IU football fan and an IU basketball fan. And everybody knows that. But I tweeted, I was just thinking about it. I think it was on New Year's Eve. I was just thinking about it. And like, I had so much fun on Twitter with mostly parody IU football accounts that are just hilarious. They're positive. They're funny. They're witty. It was one of the most fun years online that I've ever had. In the basketball one, man, are people sad. All the time. Who cares? We're football school now, baby. This is basketball.
Well, you know what it is?
This basketball stuff's for the birds.
I've told you about my interactions with the Ohio State fans after we did the post-game wrap-up show for football, and all of these Ohio State, the toxicity of the Ohio State fans just flooded our post-game wrap-up show, which I was not used to. But it's the same thing with Indiana basketball. There's so much misery within this obsessed fan base, which it's part of a large fan base. Whenever you have something like that, like you're going to have that level or that, a certain amount of those types of fans. But at the same time, it is just, I hate to say you don't want them to be a part of it, but it just makes it so much less enjoyable, right?
Yeah, I don't even log on to Twitter during basketball games. And you understand, like, it's a lot easier to be pumped on IU football. They've never experienced the hope and the joy that Indiana basketball provided now almost 40 years ago, that people are still holding on to. Indiana football has never had that. So we get something like this, and of course you're going to be all positive all the time and pumped. So I definitely understand why it's the case. I'm just saying, man, they just misery loves company. Like I was, people are still upset with the way that they're playing. They've won 5 in a row. They won a couple games that I thought USC was super talented. Now, I know they haven't won a bunch of games, but that's a really athletic team.
And I think they have a really good coach in Eric Musselman. And I know he didn't do very well at the end of his tenure at Arkansas, and that's why he's at USC in the first place. But I still think he's a pretty good coach.
Yeah, and they play an exciting brand of basketball. And, I mean, to your point, I'm not sure that game goes the same if you have two bigs that are trying to keep up with their run and gun kind of style. Getting a win like that's important. Going to the Palestra,
Yeah.
Yeah, Palestra against a Penn State team. Now, I think Penn State missed a bunch of shots that they probably normally make. Now, they got beat by a zillion by Illinois, but winning is hard. And when you win, maybe it's because I come from the football background, understanding how important it is to appreciate winning games, especially in a conference like the Big Ten that's now expanded, where everything has become level. We saw it in football. The really good teams came back a little, while the not so good teams came up, and there's just a bunch of parity. And I think that's the same thing in college basketball. You're going to just see that on a much grander scale. There's more teams, there's more players that are really, really good as young players. In college football, the older guys are typically the better players, right? Basketball, you see it every year for the last 15 years. The freshmen can be just as good as any, at least as explosive and as athletic and skilled. So there's a bunch of good players everywhere. It's hard to win. I mean, you just watched the number one team in the country lose by 30.
Get demolished. My gosh.
Made 12 shots the whole game. That's the number one team in the country. Like I've had fun watching IU because, well, at times they look like the Bad News Bears. I will concede that. They're fun to watch, at least over the last 5 games. Now, they weren't at the beginning of the year.
No.
But it is a brand.
There's a lot of people, and I've brought up this conversation a lot because, I mean, it's something to think about, because if Malik Reneau is eventually going to be back in the lineup, will Mike Woodson immediately shove him back into the starting role? Because I think based on, and especially if the success continues over the next few games, I don't think there's a reason to immediately force him back into the 4. I think there's even a really strong argument to just say, hey, Malik Reneau can just relieve Umar Ballo for a few minutes or even split some time. I don't know. It's a very tricky situation because they're both very talented players. You don't want to limit their minutes, but you also don't necessarily need them on the floor at the same time.
Yeah, I will say I'm not jealous of the position that Mike Woodson's in. Hearing it from the fans all the time. You got a player in Malik Reneau that's been super dedicated to the program, been one of the best players on your team for the last couple of years. He's the leading scorer. He's dominant on offense. When he gets to his left hand, he's really tough to stop. I think he plays good defense. He fouls a ton, so maybe that situation takes care of itself when he has 2 early fouls. But, I mean, the game is different when Umar Ballo is on the court. They play different. I don't think he's he's not Khalil Ware. He's not Trace Jackson Davis in terms of like ball skill, but he's a dominant presence. That is a monster.
It's very different. I feel like when you compare the 3 bigs that have been there under Mike Woodson, Trace Jackson was really the complete package, something that probably the complete package minus the shooting. And I don't think you necessarily need that for what he was able to do. So I don't want to count that against him.
Yeah, I mean, all you need to do is watch him in the NBA. That's a complete player. He dominates.
Exactly.
You don't need to shoot.
He dominated Khalil Ware the other night. I saw a highlight of him posterizing
on
Khalil Ware. Speaking of Ware, he was more of kind of the finesse big. He could shoot from the outside. He didn't have as strong of a motor underneath. He did at times, but it wasn't at the same level as TJD. And then with Umar Ballo, you just got a tank. He's somebody who is going to body pretty much anybody he goes up against in the Big Ten, whatever conference it may be that they're playing up against at the whatever matchup it might be. That guy is going to be a force to be reckoned with, no matter who he's going up against.
Yeah, he's just so strong. And I know his rebound numbers have gone up and up, but one of the things that impresses me the most is how many balls he gets this. I'm gonna back up. We're gonna restart that. I'm not gonna say what I was just about to say. How many tips
you found the exit ramp before it was too late.
How many tips on rebounds he gets that don't count as rebounds for him, but they're tip outs. You keeping the ball on our side of the court or getting the ball back. He gets his hands on so many different areas. Like he's improved a ton. And I think you've seen him get in a little bit better shape. He was way out of shape to start the year. He had never played this many minutes. He's slowly coming into his own. You can't take him off the court. It changes the whole dynamic of the team. But you also have a player that's been your best player or one of your best players for so long that's so valuable to the program. I'm not envious. I say all that to say I'm not envious of the position that Mike Woodson's in.
Oh, that's the other thing too, and this will be the last thing we say on basketball, because it would be malpractice if I did not talk at least a little bit of football with you, being the football guy.
Come on.
But there's a fairly large section of the fan base that has already made up their mind on Mike Woodson, and so it's almost like I won't say want him to make the wrong decision, but more so they expect him to make the wrong decision. And I think that's part of why you continue to see the certain level of toxicity on Twitter during the games.
Yeah, and I get it. He's not an explosive personality.
No.
He's pretty easy to point the finger at. That's the reality. It just is.
And he does it to himself, if we're being honest, with the way that he kind of portrays the way he says things.
The way he talks slow, but that has no indication on the way he is as a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about some of the teams that he's had, and I know it's year 4 or whatever it is. What is it, year 4?
This is year 4, yeah.
Yeah. Some of the teams that he's had, he had Trace Jackson Davis and some other guys that were pretty good. He had Khalil Ware and some other guys that were pretty good. He's never had – people criticize they don't shoot threes. He never had anybody on the team that can make a shot. And that does come down to recruiting, for sure. But when the game starts, you can only play with the players that you got. He had some dominant bigs. He had, I think, number 1 or 2 best player to ever play at Indiana in Trace Jackson Davis. You probably, and older fans will get mad, Calbert Cheaney, I'm sure, is number 1, but he's at least up there in terms of dominance. And for 3/4 of his career, he couldn't dribble with his right hand. He could only go left, and you still couldn't stop him. So you probably should throw him the ball. Khalil Ware, lottery pick. We probably should throw him the ball. Now you've got Umar Ballo that's really physical and tough, but he's not the most offensively skilled. Unfortunately for Malik Renew, he goes down. You start to see an open court kind of style. You've got some shooters, and they're jacking them up, right? So I don't know. I come at this as a 100% fan. I played basketball in high school. I was the 6th man. I was nobody special. I was a football player playing basketball.
I was less special than that. I didn't even play high school basketball.
I played on a state championship basketball team. So I know what it looks like, but I was very rarely part of it. Like those guys were doing it. So I've seen some things but never even close to Division I basketball. And that's kind of the gripe I have with a lot of people talking about football too in the past. Like, easy, slow your roll. Like, we have no clue what happens behind closed doors. I'm of the belief that we've got 5 games in a row that haven't been all pretty. A lot of teams find a way to lose at least one of them. And Indiana's gutted them out. They were on their way to losing by 40 to USC, and then they get the game under control, and then they never look back. Slowly climb their way back, and then they were up 10 the rest of the game, right? So I think Indiana's in a cool spot. Totally as a fan. They're fun to watch. I'm excited for Saturday. And that's all you can ask for. If we get to January 9th and you still have a reason to believe in the team, pretty good, right?
Yes, I mean, if you go back to the Battle for Atlantis, I mean, and I was in this camp when they got ransacked by Louisville, I was already kind of ready. I'm normally pretty easy, relatively speaking, when it comes to being critical on coaches. At least I feel like that's the way I come across. But when they got hammered by a first-year head coach at Louisville, I was ready to say Mike Woodson's just thrown in the towel. And they've seemed to have responded since then.
I think that was more than Mike Woodson. That seemed like a collective effort from the Indiana basketball team.
Oh yeah, it's like they just completely didn't get off the plane.
Yeah, I'm not sure you could have had John Wooden coaching Indiana in those games, and they just didn't have it. Whatever.
I reference that game so much just because, of course, everybody knows I live in Louisville and I'm around a lot of Louisville fans, and especially seeing them on Twitter, seeing things like there's not a score or not a deficit high enough. I was just sitting there, I'm like, they're ready to beat us by 50. And it's because they've been so down in the dumps with Kenny Payne for 2 years. And we're going to be the victims. We're going to be the first real victim of their new head coaching regime. And it felt like garbage to watch. I think that added to the anger with everything.
Yes. In the moment, that's the worst thing ever. Ever. But the reason that they were so pumped is because it's Indiana. They probably beat some teams before that by 40. Maybe they did.
Well, no, they played the previously unbeaten Tennessee team before that and got killed by them. Which again, that confuses me as well. Indiana beats that team. Again, it was an exhibition game, but on the road, and then Tennessee rattles off 14-0 to be the number one team in the country.
Yeah.
What is that nonsense?
All the reports are that the exhibition game felt like an NCAA tournament game. Like it was intense. There were refs. They were keeping score.
It was televised. You could watch it on SEC Network Plus or whatever.
The feel of it in the arena was like, this is intense.
Yeah.
We're a long way from the end of the season. They've lost 3 games. All 3 of them by a billion, right?
You say at Louisville, you had Gonzaga. Those are both blowouts. You got Nebraska was 17. So, you got blown out 3
But they were down like 30. It felt like to Nebraska.
It felt like Louisville put in 100 on them. I don't remember what that final score was.
They might have scored 100. They might have scored 100. Yeah. So, you got 3 losses that are terrible. But then you won a bunch of other games. Like the sky's not falling. I'm excited.
It'll be interesting to see over the next couple, because again, you mentioned the tough part of the schedule's coming up, and
you're in the grind now, baby.
You'll really find. I think this will be the true telltale of whether or not Malik Reneau should be inserted back into the starting lineup if he gets healthy enough to be in that position. Of course,
we'll know what. Give it a month. And we'll know.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe you've seen something that I haven't, but they haven't said exactly what his injury is. I don't believe, have they?
No, something with his knee, probably. I don't know.
So who knows? It may be season ending. It may be half of the rest of the season. Who knows? But again, I can't believe it's already been 20 minutes. That's what happens whenever we haven't chatted in a couple of weeks. But I do want to talk a little football if you still have a few more minutes. I don't think we've talked any of the transfer portal additions. How do you feel about not only that, but the guys who have decided to come back? I believe a good majority of the important pieces you won: Aiden Fisher, Elijah Surratt, I believe Omar Cooper, D'Angelo Pons, Mikhail Kamara. If I'm forgetting anybody important, you let me know. But that's a solid group of guys who were impact players for the football team, on top of what you're bringing in from the transfer portal that already gives you a good foundation for next fall.
Yeah, I think the most important part of all of it is the guys coming back. There's a ton of momentum, and you knew there'd be a ton of momentum recruiting players from outside the program. Guys that, they got that tight end from Tennessee that's been at Notre Dame. Now, I don't love he's transferred 50 times, but guys that are coming from Tennessee versus guys that are coming from some other places that they've had to recruit from in the past. get the number 2 rated quarterback in the cycle in the transfer portal. You knew with the season you had, you knew they were at least going to be in battles for players like that. But make no mistake, the big teams that you consider the big teams were coming after probably everybody that you just mentioned that's coming back with big money deals, guarantee this, guarantee that. You know that was happening. And them choosing to come back to Bloomington shows you a couple things. One, most important, there's belief in the program that starts inside the building, that there's something left to prove. If they felt like there was nothing left to prove, like this was an unbelievable season, but we caught fire in a bottle, now I'm going to go to Texas, that would say something. There's not that belief. The belief is, clearly, we left some stuff on the table. Let's go get the rest of it. The second thing is something that I think we picked up on pretty like halfway through the season and then definitely towards the end of the season. Indiana's competing like heck in the NIL deals.
Yes.
Competing like crazy. Something that everybody did
this
not
may be something
see.
you're about to mention, but when I saw Mikhail Kamara decide he was going to come back, I didn't necessarily think he was going to jump in the portal. I thought he was going to declare for the NFL draft.
Yes.
But him not doing that shows that he's making enough money with the football program that he still thinks maybe I'm overthinking that aspect of it, but it shows that he's clearly satisfied with everything, the whole package, that he doesn't feel like the NFL money right now, whether what he'd be getting would be guaranteed or not, is that big of a necessity at the moment, or something that he feels he needs to jump at immediately. Does that make sense?
Yeah. My guess is he probably got a 4th to 6th round pick grade from the NFL, which I can't remember exactly what they told us, but typically if you were like 3rd or 4th round, they would tell you to go. So he's right on the cusp of it. Maybe he got some news that he didn't like, and maybe that influenced his decision. But then again, it comes back to he can make a ton of money somewhere. This guy, his draft stock is never – his stock, not even draft stock. Stock as a player has never been higher, and it'd be tough to get even higher than where it's at right now. So for him to believe that he can come back, play another year, show it some more, and get to that 2nd, 3rd round grade, potentially higher, who knows, all while being in Bloomington, because you don't get 2nd and 3rd round grades if your team is 4-8, or even if your team is Indiana and it's 7-5. I mean, Dan Feeney is a prime example. Now he ended up being a 3rd round pick, but that's the best offensive guard in the country. And I don't know a ton about offensive line, but there's no way anyone was better than him. He played 1 million snaps and gave up 1 sack. Gave up like 2 pressures his entire career.
Yeah.
And we're playing in the Big Ten East. This is not the Big Ten West or the SEC
Jeffrey
West.
the Greek would hate if he heard you make fun of the Big Ten West.
I played them. Those teams we kicked our feet up. That's a lie. We got beat so many times by the Big Ten West.
I mean, look. I mean, this wasn't your team, but the freaking Iowa Hawkeyes, man, against Tom Allen's team in the 21 season. My gosh.
Yeah, we got beat by Iowa as well. Desmond King put the absolute clamps on me for 4 quarters. It still gives me nightmares. That guy was unbelievable.
Same year, corner for them?
Yeah, number 14. Okay. Same year he won the Jim Thorpe. Not sure if you've heard of it. Best DB in the country. Yeah, he showed me. He showed me what that looked like, and I knew I had some work to do. So, but I digress. But it just shows where, like, the state of the program, the state of Indiana, the way that, like, forget the national media. We've seen for the past month how stupid all these guys are. All of them. None of them have any clue what they're talking about. They all have bias. They all say whatever they think, and then they try to walk back. Oh, well, I didn't actually say. They're all idiots. The way that the program is being perceived by the players and by the coaches nationally is being shown by who's coming and who's staying. And the level we talked about, like, everything else is gravy. All the important games are behind us when they're playing Notre Dame. The level that they've ascended to in terms of expectation, perception, is something that Indiana's never really seen before. So obviously it's an exciting time, but it'll be interesting. He's gone after some little less proven guys, I think, in this portal. Last year was all
and that's going to be one of the biggest differences from this offseason to last offseason. One easy thing that Cignetti could do, and a lot of people have had, of course, question marks about it, but it worked, is he could bring in a lot of his guys that he knew what they could do at James Madison.
Right.
He doesn't have that luxury this time around. Now, you do have the luxury of keeping players, which is kind of the same thing as keeping your old guys from JMU in a sense. But when it comes to the transfer portal, a lot of the guys you're pulling in are guys you've never coached before, which is different than last year, of course. So there's going to be a little more of a risk to when you bring up guys from the G5 level. Is it going to translate as easily as the guys who were with JMU 2 years ago?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it's cliche.
There's no reason to doubt it yet, but it is just something
it's
different.
It's cliche to say now, but I mean, he went to James Madison with no players and took that program to the Division I FBS level and won 10 games. So I'm definitely not doubting his strategy. I think
I'm taking a look real quick. This is something I've not done a deep look at before. I'm looking at Cignetti's year 2 at each of his programs. So in year 1, I'll do year 1 and year 2. So at IUP, he began 7-3. That was his very first head coaching season in 2011. He followed that up with a 12-2 season, went to the Division II quarterfinals. At Elon, he was only there for 2 seasons, 8-4 in year 1, had a bit of a drop-off in year 2, went 6-5. In the postseason, they were in the FCS first round both of those years. And then James Madison, he was national runner-up in the FCS, 14-2. Second season, which was the COVID year, they were 7-1. So a drop off, but again, weird season.
Not really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, drop off when you get just less games, and only who knows what would happen if you would have played.
Yeah, they're 7-1, potentially on their way to 15-1.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a tough. The COVID year is a hard thing to compare to. So if you jump to year 3, it's 12-2. So and they got to the semifinals that year, and then. I mean, we haven't had a year or two at Indiana, but I mean, there's no reason to think if you look at past results, the only true drop off, and it was only a 2-win drop off, was Elon from year 1 to year 2.
And I think the schedule next year is a little. I mean, we looked at the schedule this time last year and saw 2 national championship teams, looked at it with all kinds of excitement. Didn't pan out that way, but you look at this year's schedule, you got some really exciting games on there. At Oregon, at Penn State, right? You've got the ability to beat some teams that you're probably better than, make another good run. Schedule isn't the scariest in the world again.
It's very manageable again. I think based on, because expectations have risen. That's the one thing that's going to be different too going in next year. Yeah. There will be pressure to continue to be good, right? Yep. You don't necessarily have to go to the CFP every season. But I think when you just take the base schedule, and if you assume Indiana's going to stay in at the similar level of competitiveness, I don't think there's any reason to think that 9-3 is kind of like, I don't want to say the floor, because the floor it can be a lot of things. Yeah. But I think if you beat everyone you're supposed to beat and you drop a few on the road against some good teams, those 3 losses have Iowa, Penn State, and then Oregon on the road. Yeah. I think that would be kind of, again, the neutral, like, okay, yeah, this was a good season for Indiana in year 2.
Yeah, my guess is that's probably where the Vegas odds will lie. Probably somewhere like 8.5, maybe even 9.5. But winning raises expectations. So everything has to be crisper. And I don't doubt that they're going to, I mean, he's managed it everywhere else. And I assume with the veteran leadership that he has coming back that understands how things operate, that's going to make it a lot easier on some of the newer guys coming in. We used to talk about this thing, monkey mentality. That was like our mental attitude or whatever that we would do or that we would talk about. And it's basically the story goes like if you put one monkey in a room and then a ladder in the middle and a banana at the top of the ladder. It's kind of bad. They didn't actually do this. I want to say this. This did not actually happen, but you get the idea of it from the story. First monkey goes up, climbs to the top, touches the banana, and they spray the monkey with water. Monkey doesn't like that. So then he comes back down, tries it again. They spray him again. Then they put in another monkey. Monkey climbs up, spray him with water. So now the first monkey sees this and is like, okay, this is not what we're supposed to do. Third monkey comes in. Before the third one can go up and get the banana, the other two like tackle him because they spray all of the monkeys with water whenever they go to the banana. So they like prevent him from doing that. So you have some of that in the locker room already. That was a long way to say you've got good veteran leaders that understand what it takes to win at a really high level, to get to college football playoff levels. Now they have gotten a little taste of it, so they're going to have to be even more strict with how they prepare and how they carry themselves. But man, I say it all the time because I guess I talk about it. I was just talking about it with basketball. You have to kind of stop and smell the roses if you're a fan, especially like we just played in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
We got all our key pieces coming back.
And there's a good chance that your only 2 losses, and again, actually, by the time this comes out, one of the results will already be over, Penn State and Notre Dame. But if Notre Dame happens to have been the winner, and then Ohio State beats Texas, your only 2 losses are to the 2 teams playing in the national championship game.
Yes. And now you got beat a little bit by both of them. You got beat up pretty good. So I wouldn't say that they're on that level yet.
No,
they aren't. That's something they look in the mirror and they acknowledge that. We weren't on that level. We got beat up physically by both those teams. So the little renewed motivation. I mean, how many times are they going to watch that tape? If I'm a position coach, we're watching plays from the Ohio State and Notre Dame game, not even telling players this is what we're doing, but I want them to feel it very often. I want the plays in my cut-ups to be on Notre Dame's field, to be at Ohio State's field. I want them to see playoff quarterfinal written or playoff first round, whatever was written on the field. I want them to see that. I want them to feel that hurt again. You have so many powerful images from this year that everything you want is right in front of you. You just got to go get it, and it takes that little bit more to do. And now you add a bunch of talent from a bunch of big places that have played a lot of good ball. You start to get bigger up front. I've been really pleased, and I can't wait because we're only getting started, right? Even though the portal's technically closed, there's still a lot of guys out there. Who knows what happens in the spring?
And it will reopen again right once the playoff finishes up for just a few days or something like that.
Just for the teams that are still playing. The teams that are still playing get 5 days to put their name in the portal after the fact. But then it's open in the spring again.
That's true.
So you've got a spring portal after spring practice. Hey, man, I didn't get my reps. I want to get out of here. Or, hey, I don't like this new coach we got. I want to get out of here. And some late additions, you never know. So this team is nowhere near where it will be. You'll have some guys that'll leave after spring. You got some guys that'll come in after spring. It'll just be really interesting to see how they shape up. Hopefully they get a little bigger up front, offensive and defensive line, and would love to see some more skill.
Last thing I want to ask you, what do you think about some of the guys who have come back to Indiana after transferring out and, at the end of the Tom Allen era and then deciding, okay, this is what they're all about now. Let's go try this once again. How do you feel about that?
I was conflicted at first, and maybe I'll tell you when we're not being recorded what I actually
Okay, yeah, say if you don't want to put it on record, that's fine.
No, it just is. Those kids committed to Indiana out of college or out of high school for a reason. They love the school, love the state, and loved the coach, but that's where they wanted to be. And the situation wasn't working out, so they had to go. Now you get a fresh team with a bunch of excitement. You're familiar with the confines. You see how much fun they're having. I'd probably want to be a part of it too. So, and these guys didn't transfer to the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Yeah.
Like Lewis Moore went to Ole Miss and played.
There's an offensive line. Khalil Benson went to Colorado, I believe.
I think he played too. I think he was a little bit hurt this last year, but he was
receiver from Michigan as well. I don't know how much. I know he played a few reps at Indiana. I don't know how much he was a
Wait,
factor
the
though.
receiver
Tyler
from Michigan
Morris.
came back, or was it Indiana first?
I believe so. Yeah, I think they said. I think I read something. He was there again. If I'm saying this incorrectly, feel free to call me out. Comments.
Oh, I have
But I
no
believe he
idea.
was in Indiana for 3 years and didn't see the field very much.
What's
But
this
had a
kid's
decent
name?
season
Now I
with
gotta look this
Michigan.
up.
Yeah, we can fact check while we're recording. But I was whenever I was going over some of the transfer portal additions the other day, him being one of them. Unless what I read was a mistake, he played his first 3 years at Indiana, did his 4th season at Michigan, was a decent contributor. I don't think he had a wonderful season, which of course Michigan's offense in general didn't, they weren't the flashiest at times. But I will say, shout out to the Wolverines
Are you
for
talking
kind of
about
ending the year on a bang.
Tyler Morris? I'm interrupting you.
Yes, that's what I was saying. No, yeah, I was just filling time while you were looking it up.
You're dumb. He's been
Am
at
I
Michigan
wrong?
3 years. Yeah.
Whatever article I wrote, unless I just misread it,
Liar.
it made it sound like it was that he was in Indiana for the past 3 seasons.
He was
I
a
thought
highly
his name
touted
because I
recruit.
remember when I said it, I thought his name sounded familiar. Was he a recruit out of the state of Indiana? Like, was he a high school guy out of Indiana?
Might have lost the power. Oh no, you
No,
paused
I'm
for a
here.
second.
I'm here.
Okay, you paused for a second. You said when you heard his name something, but I'm going to tell you this: number 18 wide receiver in the country out of high school, out of Illinois, Nazareth Academy.
Okay.
Played immediately as a true freshman, as a slot receiver, punt and kick returner. Only had 3 catches, but appeared in all 15 games on their way to winning a national title. Punt return.
Maybe that's why I recognize him. Maybe I just recognize him from past Michigan teams. I don't know why. Just for some reason, something made me think it was the wording in the article I read that made me think he was an Indiana guy that just never saw the field type of thing.
Yeah. I'm excited to see him because they haven't had a quarterback since 2002, it feels like. So you got all this skill out there, and this year they couldn't throw it in the ocean. And then the year they won the national championship, they were pretty dang good at running it. So I probably would have ran it too. Just haven't had a ton of wideouts. They used to churn out guys. I'm thinking of guys like Mario Manningham and what's that dude? Dang it. Played with Denard Robinson, or no, Devin Gardner is who he played with. He had 1,000,000 yards on Indiana one year, like 398 yards. Jeremy Gowan.
The one guy I'm thinking of is
Jeremy Gowan. That's what
I remember that name. I was thinking Nico Collins. I didn't think he was who you were referring to, but I had Nico.
I think he was a little after me. Jeremy Gowan was there while I was there. He my roommate was a DB. We played man coverage the whole game, and his assignment was Jeremy Gowan, and that was a bad day for my my good buddy. Bad day.
One Michigan memory I have of I believe it was your era, and it wasn't about you specifically. It was when you all were playing on the road in Michigan. I feel like Kofi Hughes had a baller game. I believe he was a tight end for one of the teams you played on, and he had a heck of a game
wide
against
receiver.
Wolverines.
Wide
was
receiver.
He not a tight end? He was a big wide receiver, though, was he not?
He was big. He's big.
Okay,
he wears like a size 17 shoe.
Okay.
But he had at Michigan, he had a number 1 Sports Center top 10 play.
Okay. That's what I'm thinking of.
Nate threw it up basically for grabs, and he just went over 2 Michigan guys and just dunked on both of them and ran for a touchdown. It was sick. But we lost. That was the game that Jeremy Gowan had 390 yards.
There you go. All comes full circle.
It was, I think that final score was like 61-49.
Oh my gosh.
Something like that. I think. I think we scored 50 and lost by 2 touchdowns. I'm pretty sure. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, it's not easy to do. But Indiana teams back in the day did that. Back in your day, I should say.
Yeah, we don't do it as much anymore.
I got to thank you so much for making my life incredibly easy tonight by basically, I mean, I'm going to do a little bit of solo stuff for my show, but you've made my life extremely easy, my friend, and I appreciate the little catch-up segment.
Dude, you're getting over a cold. I had to take some of the talking from you. I can talk all night. So one, I apologize to your listeners. They're probably tired of my voice by now.
No, you saved me from sounding like a dumbass about Tyler Morris for the second show in a row.
Yeah, 3 years at Michigan for my boy Tyler Morris.
Mitchell, enjoy what's left of your evening. and we'll do this again in a couple of weeks. We'll try to do, now that we're out of season, we'll try to do every other week if you're able to do something like that.
Yeah, man. Just text me. You know where to find me.
Again, big thank you to Mitchell Paige. Great to have him back on the show after a week of absence, just because, with football being not the main priority at this point in the calendar year and in the sports cycle, don't want to abuse his time. And I know he loves coming on, and I'm glad he still likes doing that and is willing to donate his time to me whenever he's able to. So appreciate you, Mitchell, and look forward to having you on again in a couple of weeks, more than likely. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for today's show and wrap it up for shows for the week. And I know earlier at the very beginning, I talked about, just kind of accepting things not being normal in life. And I do, even though I should probably be more like that, I do hope that next week can be a normal week, because it feels like it's been forever since we've had one of those. And maybe you feel the same way, especially if where you work, things have been a little different because of maybe inclement weather or maybe a number of other things. And I'll get to your YouTube comments, and we'll talk about some of the sports teams that don't get nearly as much recognition as they probably should. I'll do some non-rev shout outs next week, as I like to do at least once every week. And we'll get back on track just in general, and hopefully have some fun along the way. So, and also real quick too, I guess I kind of mentioned it during the Mitchell Paige segment, but no reaction to the college football playoff, because of course I am recording this on the day before. Really, the first game is happening as I'm recording this right now. It's at halftime. So I'll do full college football playoff reaction on Monday, and we'll be preparing for a national championship at that point. So, and I believe we'll have another Indiana basketball post-game wrap-up for Saturday's game against Iowa. I don't know if I'll be a part of that or if it will be Drew or Dylan or somebody else, but more than likely we'll have something like that for you this weekend. So until then, this has been another episode of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by HoosierIllustrated.com.